welcome to A Fistful of Dice. I am joined again by my lovely fiancée, Tealah, and we are going to be continuing our Party of Two video series, which was very well received the first time around. I think people enjoyed looking at somebody's face other than mine. Nice change of pace. I know I enjoyed it, so we're going to continue this series, and Vince is going to be in the video as well, and we're going to be talking about, the first episode we kind of talked about how we got started in role-playing games, and our thoughts on sort of getting started in role-playing games. And in this episode, we're going to talk about games that we've played. So we're going to be talking about stuff that we started out with, and stuff that we're playing right now. So, without further ado, the next episode of
Party of Two.
So we both had very different beginnings with role-playing games, as we previously stated in our first episode. And I got started playing the Star Wars role-playing game 2nd edition by West End Games. This is the D6 system, and this is actually where the title of the channel comes from, A Fistful of Dice, because in this system you roll a metric butt ton of D6s. And
that's the precise measurement.
That is the precise measurement.
That's the official measurement of dice.
To succeed on a task, you have to roll a metric butt ton of D6s. It says right there, Chapter 2, How to Play the Game. But I have really fond memories of this game, and I love the old school black and white art. I don't think you've ever actually looked at this book. This is Tealah's a huge Star Wars fan, so look at that.
Oh my gosh.
A very sort of simple, versatile system that I haven't played in forever, and I would love to play it again. And they actually just released a revision of the system, sort of updating it for our modern times. And I may end up running a campaign or two with it. I just remember it being a lot of fun as a kid because you get to roll all of the dice,
right.
And even though it doesn't utilize any of the fun, polyhedrals like D8s and D10s and stuff, it was still pretty cool as a kid because I knew what a D6 was.
Right.
It's your basic board game dice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this is like a board game, but you get to roll a ton of dice. It's if you're really good at shooting, you get to roll 5 of them, and that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the Star Wars role-playing game, and I didn't play a ton of this. We played a few sessions of it before I kind of got burned out on it, but it wasn't very long before I was moving on to other stuff. But your first system was...
I started with Pathfinder, which probably most of you are really familiar with.
It's...
Matt runs a lot of Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So I started with Pathfinder. Actually, I think we talked about this in our first video.
Mm-hmm.
My first ever RPG experience was playing in your...
Sunless Citadel.
Sunless Citadel.
Yeah. I took Sunless Citadel and did a little bit of finagling with it, and did it with Pathfinder.
Right, yeah, so we did Pathfinder, Sunless Citadel.
So what did you... Because looking back on... Pathfinder it's not super complex,
right.
But it is fairly crunchy and rules heavy. So
right.
After having played stuff that's a lot more simplistic, like Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that, what do you think about Pathfinder and starting out with Pathfinder?
I actually, looking back at it, I'm actually pretty glad that I started out with Pathfinder for a couple different reasons. One being that you get really used to rolling skills.
Yeah.
And everything is very specific as
right.
far as if you're climbing, you roll climb.
Yeah.
If you're swimming, you roll swim.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that.
Right.
And so it kind of was welcome.
Yeah. Here's all the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Here's every rule you could ever want.
Yeah.
And so then when I got into playing Call of Cthulhu and we ended up doing some other things that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
It was I understand now why you would roll strength for this
right.
or dexterity with, whatever you're rolling for.
Yeah.
In a little broader of a term. So for me, it kind of worked with my thought process, starting out really specific and then going to rules that were a little more broad.
Right, yeah.
I think that would just sort of depend on the person. It really worked for me.
Yeah.
Because I think that it maybe would have taken me longer to catch on to something that was a little broader.
Right. Well, and as someone coming from 3rd edition into Pathfinder, I mean, Pathfinder seems super streamlined and fluid, you know, and to its credit, it is. I think Pathfinder is for what it is a very streamlined system, and it does everything it does fairly well. But it does have a tendency to get bogged down, I think, in the specifics, like you were talking about, where it's like, you know, I want to do this thing, and it's like, but I don't have the ranks in that skill in order to do that. Like, it's like, if I haven't taken ranks in climb, I can't try and vault over this wall and attack someone with my sword.
Right.
You know, so I don't want to say it punishes people, but it is very reliant on the build. You know, that was like 3rd edition was all about the build, how you like optimize and finesse your character exactly the way you want.
Yeah. There's a cat party happening behind
us. I think that is exactly what happened in the first episode, is the cats started playing immediately. But yeah, this was my first exposure with Dungeons and Dragons, was 3rd edition, which I'm not going to talk a ton about because 3rd edition and Pathfinder are like cousins, you know, cousins who kind of have a weird sort of romantic thing going on almost.
I'm not going to go there.
That analogy works. 3rd edition it's so crunchy. And I just have I have really fond memories with it, and I like, after having played other editions of D&D and having played other games, 3rd is definitely something that I realize is a little bit archaic almost. Yeah. But I still love it because you know I was telling Tealah about this, about the idea of a skill dump, where you save up your points, your skill points, to put them in a skill that you don't have as a class skill yet. So you like take 4 levels of fighter, save up all your skill points, and then dump them all into tumble when you take a level of rogue and increase your AC. And it's like, you know, that is so power gamey, but there was just something really satisfying about it. I don't know. That's just the generation of gamers that I grew up with was all about builds and optimizing your build, and making there's something to be said about making a character exactly the way you want them within the rules, you know, and not having to go outside of the rules to make that character. So, to its credit, that's where it is. Even though I grew up on 3rd edition, I probably played Savage Worlds as much, if not more, than I did 3rd edition. This was kind of the preferred system in my family gaming group for a long time. And you've never actually played Savage Worlds, but I think you would really dig it. So Savage Worlds is a genre agnostic game, meaning that it is not tied to any sort of genre. It's not tied to horror or fantasy or sci-fi. It is a versatile system, sort of like GURPS, where you can just sort of make it work for anything. And there are a bunch of different campaign settings and rule modifications that go into this, like Deadlands and Sundered Skies and stuff, that all sort of use the Savage Worlds rule set to create different sort of games. And it's a very simplistic system that the whole thing is, the better you are at something, the bigger the die is. Okay. So if you're just not very good at something, you're rolling a d4. If you're like the best, you're rolling a d10. So it's sort of a really intuitive system, because okay, I'm good at this, I'm going to roll a bigger die. And the other thing that Savage Worlds has that I really liked when we were playing it was the whole idea of edges and hindrances. Okay. So you would have an edge, which is like a feat in D&D, where it gives you something that you're good at, or something that you have a one-up on. But a hindrance is something to balance that out, and it's something that negatively affects your character. So, and you had to balance those two out. So it's like you couldn't have an edge without taking a hindrance. So for every edge you took, you had to take a hindrance. Yeah. So it's like you could load up on edges. You could give yourself, 4 or 5 different edges, but you had to take hindrances that were worth an equal amount of points to balance it out. So you end up with really sort of intriguing characters, especially in some of the weirder campaign settings. Like Savage Worlds has like Deadlands is really really weird. Space 1889 is super awesome.
Looking at the pictures they have in here really let you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, Rippers is like Victorian England, and you like graft monster pieces onto yourself, onto your character. So it's just, I had a lot of fun playing Savage Worlds. It's a really versatile system, and it's something I'd like to run again at some point, because it's one of those systems that really holds up, and it just feels really kind of slick and fluid and intentional. So, but I think along the same lines, Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu, as previously noted, was my second RPG.
That's right, your second ever RPG, yeah.
So I had played Pathfinder for several months on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And then went over to Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I think we did a one-off, right? And then that spawned a campaign after that.
Yeah. We just did a one-off, a good old mystery in a museum.
Yeah, a night at the museum type
aliens.
session. Yeah, that's right.
And then we all loved it so much that, and it was such a nice change of pace from Pathfinder that it turned into a campaign.
Yeah.
We decided we wanted to keep our characters and see what happens to them.
Yeah, we actually just wrapped up that campaign just a couple weekends ago. So we'll come back to it though. Call of Cthulhu is another one of those systems where I get burned out on it really easily, because it is so like it's eldritch horror. Like you
it's
can't
very
really
niche.
Yeah, you can't really you can make it more pulpy or more horror. Like I definitely ran a very pulpy adventure-y sort of campaign. But it does have its niche, like you said. And so, but it's a system that is going to call to me again. Yeah. Like I already know that I'm going to, in a year or so, I'm going to be like, oh man, I want to run some Call of Cthulhu again. Yeah. And I would say that Call of Cthulhu is like one of the ultimate one-off games.
Yeah.
Because characters they don't just die. They will go insane.
They go crazy. Yeah.
So you can really crank through the characters playing Call of Cthulhu.
One of the guys in our group, his character has gone insane.
Yeah.
Or very nearly completely insane.
Well, he keeps looking at books and stuff. He's crazy. He's playing Call of Cthulhu, and he's like, yeah, I'll open the book.
I'll open it.
He's like, no metagaming whatsoever. Yeah. Like, everyone else is like, I'm not looking at that. And he's like, I'll open it up and read it. Look. It's gotta be something good, right?
I'll open the package. I'll open the door.
Sure, I'll stick my hand in the dark crevice. Yeah. He's just like, he's a lot of fun to...
Which is, it's really fun.
It is,
It's fun to have someone go crazy at your party.
I know, it's better than having a suspicious party that don't stumble onto anything that you've set in their path. But
exactly.
The thing that I like about Call of Cthulhu is that the success of the characters is not dependent on the game master telling you whether you succeeded or not. It's all, you roll. If you roll into your skill, you did it.
Yeah.
Like, there are, especially with 7th edition... there are degrees of success. Like, it's like, oh, you need a critical success or a hard success to do this. But you never fail by rolling just under your skill number. And it's really sort of a simple, easy to grasp thing.
Right.
And I think even people who haven't played a ton of RPGs will sort of pick it up fairly quickly. Because there's just the 2 die involved, the D10 and the percentile, and I just think it's a really kind of slick, elegant system.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I was talking about details and specifics in Pathfinder, and Call of Cthulhu is like that too, in a more straightforward way.
Yeah, because you've got the huge list of skills.
It's a huge list of skills, and some of them get really specific as far as, like, firearms is different from fighting.
Yeah. There's like astronomy and all the different sciences.
Occult. So like knowing something about unexplainable things and
library use and research.
So like lots of really, really specific things, but it is more relatable to real life because it takes place, at least the campaign that we ran, and I think that's traditionally
for the most part,
is like 1920s, 30s.
In that era.
Yeah, so it's technology that we're more familiar with because we're not that far removed.
Yeah, and it we found that like the people in our group that weren't as into like fantasy and sci-fi really sort of latched on to Call of Cthulhu because it was like, oh, there's cars and phones and guns
and gangsters
and I can relate to these things, you know. And it's like, you know, if nothing else, like my grandma was around when all this was happening, so
or if you maybe aren't someone who likes fantasy movies or TV shows as much, maybe you're into more period things that take place in the 20s or even the 40s because it's close enough technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that you can kind of dig your teeth into and enjoy a little bit more.
Yeah, and I've heard people say that like you can't really fully enjoy Cthulhu if you're not into like Lovecraft, but I think it's almost better if you haven't read a lot of Lovecraft or aren't super familiar with him. Yeah,
I am coming into Call of Cthulhu. I was familiar with the name and that it was weird, you know, ancient mystery type things, but that's all that I knew about Lovecraft. I didn't know any specifics. I still haven't read anything.
So, and that's great as a GM because I can just throw this stuff at you and you guys are like, what?
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, exactly. So
so it's really fun because you're still fighting monsters, but it's happening in more of a, like our campaign, most of it took place in New York City. Someplace that's really relatable. You can picture what it looks like. Is it going to sound like cat fur?
It might.
On the microphone?
It might.
There was a cat rubbing on the microphone if there's sound. There's still monsters, you're still fighting them.
Yeah.
But it takes place in New York City, so you can have a little better picture. So then, again, if it's someone who's new to RPGs, like I was at the time, when we first started Call of Cthulhu, it was almost a little bit easier to immerse myself into that setting and my character because it was just a little bit more relatable and
it's more tangible.
I mean, I'm a lifelong fantasy reader and viewer.
Yeah. Cat butt.
Jeez. This is gonna be a hard one to edit. Sorry, babe.
It's all right.